They say the longest journey begins with the first step, and that's the reason we've started at Clinton, which, as far as I'm concerned, is at the center of the universe. One of the remnants of the past in Clinton was the railroad trestle that went over the Nashua River. No longer exists, but looking underneath it, you can see the first part of Clinton. My overseas travels, I would say, began in 1955, and it all goes back to World War II. I had all of my brothers served either in that war or in the Korean War, and they all came back safely. So when I became a priest, one of the first things I did was volunteer as a chaplain, and one of the first things that happened was my offer was taken up, and before I know it, in 1955, I was on my way to Korea. These are pictures of the city of Seoul and the bridge over the Han River. It became very important because it was destroyed during the invasion, and they had to repair it, and it was a symbol of the rebirth of Korea. These are people who are planting the sprouts of rice in the rice paddies, and they would do that all day long. And it's a scene I saw over and over again, and once I left Asia, that haunted me. It was just something that was so beautiful in my mind. Getting down to work, my work involved traveling by any type of transportation, truck, boat, or ship. This is by far the furthest. It's Pyongyang-do, the furthest island north towards the communist territory. And I remember my Christmas there I spent on this island. And then Christmas morning, some Vietnamese Catholics, Korean Catholics, excuse me, asked me to come and say Mass, and I said it in a very humble building, much more humble than the cave that Jesus was born in, but it's a beautiful memory that I always will retain. After I came back from Korea, I was stationed out in Leicester and was very close to Nazareth Orphanage, where Father Harrington, later Bishop Harrington, was the chaplain, and through him I got interested in social work, and I became a member of Catholic Charities in Worcester. I ended up in Vietnam right after the Tet Offensive, which was a very bloody and a very traumatic experience for the people of South Vietnam. And the city that was hit the most was the city of Hue, the ancient royal capital. So what happened, that was my first assignment. We were the first civilians, this team, that went into Hue. This is a picture of the Forbidden City, the royal palace. The kings of Vietnam used to live in this city, and no one was allowed to enter. And this was the center. It was very symbolic. It was the center of fighting. The Viet Cong desperately wanted to capture it, but they did not succeed, and it was only at the sacrifice of the lives of many Marines that died in the battle that kept them from taking it over. But the result was it was left in ruins. And one day we visited, no one was there, and the door to the throne room was hanging on one hinge. It was sort of a symbol of what had happened to Vietnam. I didn't drive this boat, but I thought it was a great place to pose just as a marker. And my task was to go and visit these places and see what was going on. That is a typical Montagnard house. Just before I came here, this was a very dangerous area. One of our workers had been kidnapped, and she was released. She had been working in this hospital. This is just a sense of humor which is different from ours, the Oriental. people, but they love to celebrate birthdays. Now, after I left Vietnam, I came back to be pastor at the Holy Rosary in Clinton. They desperately needed someone in Cambodia who could speak French. Well, since I had gone to school in Canada for 6 years, the family thought I was a little crazy, but they might have been right. But what happens is you volunteer, and then when you get thousands of miles away, you say, how come I'm here? Now, every place you go, things were different. The refugees weren't the same type of refugees you find in other countries. They had left rural areas because they were afraid. So we set up a city of refugees. Here's an example of the houses that we built, and I think we did a beautiful job, and we sunk first-class wells. Well, just because people are refugees doesn't mean that they didn't come from stable life, and you try to give them the best you can. When I finally left Cambodia, I got a royal send-off, and as I think of it now, it's the best memory that you could have. Now, next to me in this is D. Belong, Mr. D. Belong, the assistant to Lon Nol, the president. Unfortunately, he stayed behind. He took refuge in the French embassy, but they had to expel him. The Khmer Rouge demanded it, and he was killed, as was my friend, the Bishop of Battambang. So several people whom I knew lost their lives. After Catholic Relief Services got my name in their Rolodex, when each new crisis would come, they would call. So I went over to Thailand a couple of times, and we lived in Thailand in an Indian landlord. He had a building that had several apartments. Now that may look nice, the furniture is nice, but there was no air conditioning except in the bedrooms. The Good Shepherd sisters worked in the slums of the city of Thailand, and they would pay the poor people to get together to fill the orders for us, and we packed these stuff for each family in shopping bags, and we went to the edge of a jungle, and they told us there were these poor people who had fled from the Khmer Rouge, and they were at the top of a mountain. So I told them that the people in the United States heard about them and had sent this to them, and they were really grateful, and I was feeling it was well worth the effort. Here are the people who would come through the South China Sea and escape by boat. The only thing they had guiding them was the Holy Spirit. Some of us are here, he took the rest. That's referring to the people who died. Lest you think that we never took a vacation, we certainly took our R&R. One of the times, a group of us from the central office went up to the River Kwai. This is the famous River Kwai. I wanted to make sure that I appeared on this bridge because it was so famous. I just put in some of these statues to give you an idea of the culture of the whole Southeast Asia. Sometimes they will incorporate, their own features into the statues they make. This is very typical of Thai architecture. It's like an Oriental Camelot. Now, I came across this way out in a little village in the countryside. Wherever you go, you have temples and stupas and statues to Buddha. Now, my last overseas trip ended up in Lebanon. It was only 3 months, but the most eventful 3 months of all my overseas work, and now I realize the most dangerous. And while I was there, the president was assassinated. The American embassy was attacked. The massacre at Sabra and Shatila took place. 10 minutes away from where I was living, and the Israelis invaded West Beirut. This was on my way out from Lebanon. It's the only place that I didn't dare take pictures, because that would immediately make people think you were a spy. Before all this difficulty, they used to have son et lumière, sound and light concerts and things here at Baalbek. After a particularly heavy artillery duel, when we came back, the firemen were in front of our hotel. Our hotel had been car bombed. When those Twin Towers were blown up, it had a delayed effect on me. That thing about my hotel being blown up, I didn't make much of it. But when I stopped and saw what happened to the people, I said, Lebanon has come to the United States. And I always sort of felt that it would. You know, it's not over there now, it's with us. We have a lot to learn from the rest of the world. I was in Vietnam, down in Long Swin. I'm talking to someone, and I got frustrated about something. And I said, well, why do you think we came here? And they said, so you could learn from us. And that perhaps is the answer. I hope I learned something. My father was born in Clinton, but my mother was born in Boston. We had the pond in back of us where we went swimming in the summer and skating in the winter, and everybody knew everybody else. My father, he was a Boston fireman. When I was in high school, he passed away very suddenly. We feel it was from an injury that he received in a fire. 4 of my brothers were in World War II, and then Billy, the youngest, when I'm sure he volunteered, it was Marine, so he volunteered, and he was in the Korean War, and he was in the retreat from, Choson Reservoir. All my brothers were very quiet and gentle when you met them, but they really would stand up for whatever they believed in. They would stand up for it, and James was just like that. It was sort of a surprise that he volunteered for the paratroopers, because he was an excellent student, excellent at Holy Cross, and when he was in high school, and you would have thought, you know, some other type of thing. But he went through all the campaigns, you know, and he came out. God was good to him. And with Leonard again, he went into the Navy, and he really loved the Navy. Now, because he stayed in afterwards, but he was a person who really that was a vocation with him. And with Edmund, you know. He was a good football player in high school, so good that he played professionally. I think it was for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And when he went into the service, he'd be conscientious, and he got the Silver Star and so forth. You'd expect, he'd be in the middle of everything. And then when he came out, he was in the FBI, and he was commissioner down in Boston. And to this day, when he died, some of the people, they turned out the policemen just in a marvelous way. But to this day, they'll talk about him. And he was a person of absolute integrity, He did go on to another job, a good job afterwards, but he spent his money and his fortune on his children, and that's all he ever was interested in. And Joe, after he got out, worked for the PX. Joe was more in the accounting line. He took his studies in accounting, and he had some very responsible jobs overseas and traveled all over the world, you know. But he settled down in Florida, so we didn't see as much of him. We had Billy, who was the youngest in the family, and when in our little neighborhood in East Boston, we were in a little enclave. He was the only little child in the neighborhood, so he'd make his rounds of the houses, and he went and adopted one of the families who had only a teacher. She was their only daughter, and he was their second child, so to speak. So that he went, and he again was a good football player, and he volunteered for the Marines. And when he came out, he chose to go to Boston University, and he made a very good record there, and had all the makings of a good teacher. He really just, that was the type of interest he had. And again, he's someone who really died younger than we would have expected, you know. For me, all my brothers are gone and ahead of me, and I never would have expected. I was blessed in the family I came from, but now I am so impressed by their families and by their wives and their children. You know, I may be a little bit prejudiced, but I hear all these things and read all the things in the paper. We're not perfect as a family, but when we get together at family reunions, especially every summer, I'm just utterly astonished at how well everybody gets along together, and we don't have, perhaps we don't discuss religion or politics, we don't dare, but we get along fine. We tell the same stories, and some people even ask me for my jokes, which I think that's the highest tolerance there is.